Good evening, guys. I want to start a little project where I draw planes, and they're going to be basically drawn without looking at a reference point, i.e. without looking at a picture or a model of the plane. Now, this is simply because I have a slightly obsessive nature, and I've got this almost encyclopedic knowledge about World War II fighters and bombers, and I just think it would be pretty cool to see if I try and use my memory to draw planes from scratch, how accurate they are at the end. So I'm going to try a pretty basic image of a Spitfire, Supermarine Spitfire. Here you can see me just, I'm just starting to play around with reminding myself about that plane. I mean, I made a number of airfix models when I was younger of the Spitfire. It's got this beautiful elliptical wing, the very famous wing that R.J. Mitchell designed, which made it such a not just capable but beautiful fighter aircraft. And yeah, let's see if I can capture the beauty. Again, I'm just right now putting some high-level shapes together in my head to remind myself the dimensions and the relative shapes and aesthetics of the plane. I'm going to try and do a couple of angles of each plane that I do as I draw them. So I'll do one from underneath of the Spitfire right now, and then I will maybe do a sideways one. So this is all real time, this drawing. I'm just drawing it now as I speak to you. I'm a average drawer, I'd say. Well, maybe I'm above average at drawing compared to most people, but it's certainly not my profession. It's not something that I do very often, but when I do it, I really enjoy doing it. It's a kind of cathartic and just relaxing experience for me. So I just wonder if there's anyone out there who's going to enjoy as I slowly shape up this plane into something which is semi-representative of the real thing. Again, I'm not looking at a picture of a Spitfire right now. Here's the kind of side-on view. Very sloppy right now, just trying to remember. The wing's a bit too far forward there. The angle of the fuselage is actually looking a bit more like a hurricane. Yeah, there's the wing at the back. It's okay. Look, I'm going fast right now just to get an eye for the dimensions, as I said. And then I'll start to erase things as I get a little bit more comfortable with how I'm getting this shape together. It's got that famous cockpit that I always remember, the cockpit having the kind of three sections. It's got the bulletproof front with the triangular kind of quarter section. Then it's got a bubble, the main bubble, and the square dome at the back. I'm just going to add some duck egg blue to the underside of the Spitfire right now. I think, comment below, but if you're like me, you probably think this is a I don't know, maybe a Mark V Spitfire. They're kind of not the earliest, like the 1 or the 2, but definitely not into the later Marks, like the Mark 14, which I think had the Griffin engine. This has got the Merlin engine. So yeah, it's very much a work in progress coming together. Don't get too alarmed by the awful shape of that elliptical wing that I've just put on there, because I am going to be erasing that as I just get my memory back around how this plane looks. I mean, to be honest, I haven't looked at a picture of a Spitfire, honestly, in months probably. Maybe I've seen something on YouTube, like a video of it. Maybe I saw some video of like a Battle of Britain memorial flyover, something like that. But honestly, this is really from memory. The tail I just drew there isn't right either. It's too kind of triangular. Need to adjust that. I'm just trying to get the nose, the right length of the nose compared to the nose cone. Also, the thickness of this pen that I'm using is a little bit too thick, and I'll bring a thinner one in once I'm happier with the dimensions. So yeah, let's get this tail right. That's a little bit better, isn't it? It's more like that egg shape, and then oh, that isn't right either. You need the right angle from the tail, and then up straight line straight up to the cockpit. Here we go. There's a nice little option on the program I use to get that back of the fuselage nice and straight. Now let's try and clean up this cockpit. What I'm going to do going forward with the planes is probably start in a thinner pen and then do another layer on top once I'm happy with the rough outline. Oh, you can see, yeah, I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident about the shape and dimensions now. That cockpit's coming together a little bit cleaner. The noses are still awful. It starts way too far back, plus it's dipping a bit as it goes up towards the nose cone, which it shouldn't. That's a little bit better. It's a yeah, maybe this wing isn't quite right, and that's putting off the overall kind of look and feel of the plane. So yeah, let's tidy that a bit. Nose is too far forward. That's getting a bit nicer. So I'm erasing it. You see the elliptical wing there coming together a bit nicer. The nose is looking a little bit more in proportion. Yeah, that's more like the shape. Still a little bit too much of a drop on that nose. It looks a bit like, what does it look like? It looks a bit like something else that I can't think right now. You know what a beautiful plane this is, though. I mean, the fact that I haven't looked at one for so many months or arguably years in any kind of great detail studying it, and it just kind of springs to mind and I can get it. That's the sign of a beautiful design, let alone the functionality of the plane. I mean, of course, the plane wasn't... I don't think R.J. Mitchell designed the Spitfire with the predominant need of it looking beautiful, but it just happened to be tick the boxes in both form and function. Incredible. So yeah, let's get rid of this drop on the nose, which is causing it to sit uncomfortably for me. And here we go. Here we go. That is looking a bit more like a Spitfire. A little bit better. Getting cleaner. Wings starting to feel a little bit more like they should. Let's clean up the kind of silhouette of the plane. Yeah, that cockpit, until the cockpit's right, the plane isn't going to look right. Let's face it. And of course, anyone who knows that Spitfire knows that it's got this very unmistakable, well, some of them had a circular, some had a square mirror above the cockpit for rear view. You can tell I'm struggling with it right now. Let's just clear that up along the bottom and see if I've actually... I'm trying to think if I got this placed in the right location along the fuselage, at the right distance between the fuselage and the nose. Let's see. It's an interesting process because obviously you want to, when you first start like this, you just want to get the overall dimensions of the plane feeling right. Until you get the kind of macro of the picture right, you can't really focus on one particular area for too long because it's just for someone like me, it's like annoying that I can see that something's completely wrong. Right now, the air intake under the nose is completely incorrect, and I'll be addressing that soon, but the cockpit's annoying me. So I'm bringing that, I'm trying to address the cockpit at the same time. Okay, now let's fly over to the underside to get that kind of underside silhouette. This is the famous image that people would see as the plane buzzed them during World War II. I remember always watching, I think it was the film A Bridge Too Far, where there's a young boy out in the countryside. I think it must be in occupied France, and he's cycling through a country lane, and a Spitfire comes over his head at about 20 foot or something. And I seem to remember the look of delight on the boy's face as that happens. And it just sent a absolute, electric feeling through me as a young kid, watching that and just thinking how cool that must be to see these World War II fighter aircraft buzzing around you. Coming back to the nose cone. Come on, let's try and get this air intake sorted out. We know it's wrong. Anyone who knows the Spitfire who's watching knows it's wrong. I'm just trying to work out why it's wrong. Of course, at some point when I'm happy, I need to add the aerial that sits just behind the cockpit there, but I'm not going to bother doing that until I'm more confident that the dimensions are right. I'm just going to add a little bit of olive drab here just to add some rough, more visual familiarity to the plane. It's going to help me maybe give me more of a reference to how this looks. You know, I made the 1/24th scale Spitfire by Airfix probably when I was about 12, and I remember I spent 2 weeks putting it together because I was so absolutely desperate to make sure that I did it all perfectly. I mean, this is a very shoddy paint job right now, but it just is, again, just helping me visualize how the plane should look, get those dimensions right. Another of my favourite memories of the Spitfire, this is a very famous video on YouTube. I'll probably put a link to it below in the description, of a Spitfire buzzing a news crew solo. Okay, let's sort out this air intake. That's annoying me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scratch this completely. Look, I think I can already see how that's going to look better. Oh, let's make sure we are using the right pen. And the right colour. Something a bit more like that, but not quite. Zoom out a bit. No, I'm not happy with that yet. What I'm going to do is bring the brush size down a bit. Now, some of you might be wondering if I get really stuck, will I refer to a picture? The answer is yeah, but the point is that I'm trying to get as far along as I can without needing to do that. Is that looking better? Better, but not perfect. Now, let's get a little bit more colour in there. I can imagine some of you who know your planes screaming right now about certain things that aren't right, and I'm aware of that, but you just got to give me a little bit of time. Because I'm trying to get this done relatively fast. This isn't going to be a 3-day project for me. This is going to be more like maybe an hour-long project. So I've just got to move on from getting too obsessed with each section, then come back to it once I've had a bit of time to reflect. Something's still annoying me about this down here. The bottom of the kind of cowling and fuselage. Something isn't right. Is it that I've got the cockpit too far back in general? It needs to be brought forward. Is that it? Something isn't right. If I just quickly... Something's bothering me around about that bit. And I don't know what it is. I think it's that, honestly. I think it's that. The top of the cowling, there's too much of a drop still. I think there should essentially be a straight line on the Spitfire. Maybe on the Hurricane it's a bit more of a drop like that, but on the Spitfire I feel it's flatter. What do you think, guys? Any better? I think that is better, actually. And then is the... Let's just pull up. If I was to just wipe that out completely. Is the nose just a little bit too far down now? Right. I think one of the problems is that the wing, the way the wing is sitting, isn't quite right. So and then I think the other problem is that this should be a bit more like this. And I think the cockpit should probably start about here. And go to about, no, that's completely wrong. I'm sorry about that. That is not right. So wrong on a number of levels. You know, I only started drawing on a iPad over the past, I think, about 2 years, and it's just revolutionized drawing for me, because I used to really enjoy drawing, but you know, you always have to have the right equipment. You'd run out of things, you'd not have good paper, you'd lose the picture halfway through. But with this, you can just save it, keep it, make immediate changes, don't have to rub things out, or if you make a mistake, you can instantly kind of forget it. It's just great. It's just great. Right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have a quick look at a Spitfire on a picture, simply because I want to see where this cockpit should sit. Spitfire Mark V, Google image from the side. Okay. Oh, interesting. Interesting. I see a couple of things that aren't right here. One being the placement of the wing. It's too far back, and then the cockpit is actually further back. So I'm going to, it's always tough when you have to get rid of something that you thought was quite good, but no, it's wrong. This has to go quite a bit further forward, this wing. When I say quite a bit, I mean a lot. Probably needs to start about here. Something more like that. And then the cockpit. I'm obviously going to clean all this up as I get it right. The cockpit starts kind of in the last, it's more like this. That's a little bit better, isn't it? Okay, we are cooking on gas now. I'm a little bit more comfortable. Yes, it's got a cartoony element to it, But that's okay. I'm not going for perfection. I'm going for something that people say, you know what? That's a Spitfire. No matter how you look at it, that's a Spitfire. Before, it wasn't right. You could have argued it looked more like a Hurricane or a Typhoon or something. This is better. And of course, now we start to add these exhaust pipes. I think there's 4-ish. And then it's a little bit rounder. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. This is a Spitfire. There's probably people saying it's still not great, man. But look, I'm not a pro. I just enjoy doing this stuff. Let's try and get that wing looking right. Let's try and get the tail. I think the tail needs to be a little bit more. A little bit bigger. Yep. I also think this is completely wrong to have that starting there. You know what I might do as well? Because I'm a massive fan of the desert versions of these planes. I might actually make it into the desert warfare. I don't know if they called them the tank busters, because maybe that was the just the Hurricane that they called the tank busters, but these planes had slightly different air intakes that were bigger when they were used in the desert in Africa. And I think the main reason for that was because obviously you've got dust and extra heat to manage. So the radiator or whatever it was had to operate differently. I'm no technical expert, but there was definitely a difference to the way that had to operate and cool down those engines. So, and maybe filter the dust as well. So I think that is looking a bit more like a Spitfire. So if we go for a desert camo one, what we're talking about is actually a different colour scheme. We'll be looking at a sandy colour. So let's start to add a bit of proper colour to this now. If it's sand that we're after, let's try and find what colour. More of an orangey sand, I think. So something like this, perhaps. Okay. Of course, it was sand, but it was sand with a brown with it to it as well. For me, there's something very special about those. The desert Hurricanes, the desert Spitfires, the desert Typhoons. They just looked so cool, and they were a seriously dangerous plane to have around. They, from my understanding, they you know, were used for ground attack a lot. Just hitting these tanks in the desert, these German tanks. I think maybe Italian tanks as well. Because they had to have very, very strong armor-piercing ammunition. So they didn't carry many rounds, I don't think. I think there was something crazy, like maybe less than 20 rounds they'd be carrying with them, but they were just, they would basically penetrate the armor of a tank and knock these things out, which was obviously incredibly important from a strategic and operational standpoint, to have a weapon that could take on these tanks that were highly destructive. And yeah, that's why they called the Hurricanes the tank busters. Now they had a red nose cone, kind of reddy orange nose cone. So let's start that. Obviously we'll give it a bit more of a 3D effect as we move forward. Just want to get that looking about right. Very nice. The underneath of the desert Spitfires was a very kind of rich blue, actually. It was something like this. That's probably too rich, but at this stage, it'll do. And again, we're not going for perfection, we're going for a simple but representative picture of a Spitfire. I think that's pretty respectable. It's nice. It's quite pleasing when you start to just clean it up with the eraser here. You start to feel that you know, you're making some progress. Start adding these clean lines, or cleaner lines. And of course, you don't really want to have any of this black lines here, because they don't make sense. When you look at a picture of a plane like this, in real life, it's not really what you see. So we need to start adding a little bit of, let's say, adding a little bit of 3D color to it. But let's get the second color. Of the camouflage on there, and I think it's kind of like, again, like a kind of sandy brown, something like this. And then they brush. And obviously these planes had specific camouflage markings, so whatever I do in terms of how the paint's laid out won't be correct perfectly, because you know, these each plane had its own, I think it was its own distinct camouflage. I don't think they all had the same kind of pattern of camouflage on them, but this is where I have artistic license to kind of do roughly what I think's right. reminds me very much of doing this in my youth when I was doing my Airfix kits. Sometimes you'd find a reference picture and try and recreate it. Sometimes you just do your own thing. And, you know, they both worked. I'm trying to remember which Spitfire, what code was on the Spitfire, the 1/24th scale Spitfire that I made. I want to say it was BZD, which is a very famous Spitfire of the fighter collection in the UK. However, I think I'm probably getting mixed up. I think I've still got that model back home somewhere, so one day I'll have to try and dig it out. Let's put some camouflage on the wing. That's very good. That's better. Doesn't look, let's take that off, it doesn't look right. Okay, starting to get somewhere. I'm really going to start cleaning up the edges now because it just looks messy otherwise. It's getting too pointy there. So what we can do now is add a bit of 3D effect. This is where it becomes apparent that I'm not well, even more apparent that I'm not a professional illustrator, because I choose a bit of a kind of easy way of doing this, which probably isn't technically correct, but I just choose a slightly darker hue of the colour and kind of add it into sections where I think it would be darker. don't like that bit. So just backpedal with that. Let's put a bit of a darker yellow on there, so if I go back to this, that's it. Whoops. So I think lesson learned for the next picture is don't go for such a, either go in layers, so do a layer with black and then build the rest of it on top, or and get rid of the black, or just use a different a lighter color as you build it, so you don't have to then fight the black away like this once you start getting more confident with the look and feel. Because now I'm kind of masking it, which isn't, I don't think, the best way of doing it. I'm still learning how to use this software, but essentially some nice little shortcuts that I've learned over the past year or so. It's handy. Now, of course, I believe the landing wheel was stuck down on this. Yeah, in fact, it definitely was stuck down on the Spitfire. It was non-retractable, so that is definitely an area that I need to add. A slightly darker version of this blue as well. Again, fighting the black bits there, which just make it look a bit unrealistic. Hopefully you can see this is coming together okay. Now, of course, there needs to be a, if I just quickly select line gradient, you see the line here from the wing. Whoops. Line here from the wing. That's still not right. Let's go inking. Line here from their wing should be roughly the same. So I need to bring this forward a bit. Well, it shouldn't be roughly the same, it should be exactly the same. So I'm going to bring that forward a bit. I'm going to start using the ink, which has a thicker and more definite property. You can see it's starting to come together a little bit. I wouldn't call it a disaster. Again, apart from that quick look at the position of the cockpit and the wings, I haven't been referring to a picture on this. Genuinely, this is all from memory. Start to do that cone, nose cone nicely. And then we can just add a kind of more maroony red underneath. And then a lighter red kind of across. That doesn't make sense. Maybe something like this across here. And then white, just like a kind of flash of white. Let's see how that looks. Starting to get there. We'll be adding more texture to it soon, but now how to deal with the interior of the plane there. So let's get a grey. A light grey. Got studio pen selected, and basically this may not be. Let me just clear this up a bit. Yeah, we need to do this a little bit. You spend a little bit of time to make sure that this is done correct, because it could really ruin it if it's not, if the cockpit isn't done properly. So what I might do is just dial back all of this around here. Really clean it up. And then have it like this. Clean up in here as well. Goodbye to the last bits of green, remnants of green from the when I was doing the olive drab version. No longer needed because we decided to go desert camo, didn't we? The beautiful bubble on there. Let's clean it up around here. Clean it up around here. Ironically, that doesn't look very good right now. I think the problem is that it needs to be bolder, obviously. I'm just trying to work out. I think there's like a seat here, and the pilot would be sat here. One of my very weak points of drawing is actually when it comes to the drawing people's faces and things. I find it very difficult. That's not right. Okay, second time I'm going to check the picture. Right, I can see what I'm doing wrong. This simply needs to go like this, and like that. And that probably needs to be a bit bigger. That's too upright, so it needs to come back like this. And honestly, the colour of the structure on the cockpit is actually the same colour as the camouflage, interestingly. Now the wheel itself kind of comes out here. That's wrong. That's kind of okay. Probably a bit big, let's see. The colour of the wheel, stem, is actually the same blue, I believe. Something like that. I think that's okay. So we just need to be a little bit artistic with the way that the cockpit works. Very difficult, particularly when you've got a white background, to make that look semi-decent or realistic. You can see that's a airman with his goggles and flying helmet. I'm trying to think if I've ever sat in a Spitfire. Been to Duxford a few times, a number of times, to watch the Battle of Britain Memorial flight. To watch the Battle of Britain Memorial flight and the Flying Legends air display. I've sat in a few planes. I don't think I've ever sat in a Spitfire. That's a bucket list activity, if there ever was one. And of course, you know, you can even pay to go on a flight in one these days, which I think is would be just phenomenal. So I think now we can start looking at a little bit of spray paint. So if we go to this is where you start adding a bit more texture to the picture. So we can do maybe a little bit of something like this. See how that's working? It just adds an air of 3D to it, which it was lacking before. And then a lighter element as well. Too much again. A little bit across the tail, see if I can get a little bit of 3D feel to it there. Across the wing. Across the nose. There's too much black lines on here, so let's try and clean that up. I'm going to check the picture again because I need to make sure that if I put some decals on here, some codes, that it's accurate how it fits, because that could really mess up the look of the plane if I get that wrong. So what we've got first is a let's do the roundel. No, that's wrong. Roundel there, then a thin white roundel. I'm sure there's a very accurate way of doing this, but I don't know what it is. I'll learn. And then the kind of darker blue, something like this. Again, I don't want it to be perfect, it doesn't need to be. In fact, I want it to have a bit of character, really. And then yellow. Thin stripe of yellow around the outside. The yellow needs to be really nicely round, I think, so there's a way of doing that where you kind of you draw it how's that look? That's okay. Not perfect, but okay. Then we can get the same red here. Goes like this. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that I definitely wouldn't remember well enough. And I'd really mess it up trying to guess how this element worked. Okay. You know what? There's a problem here. This roundel is too small right now. It needs to be bigger. It needs to be quite a bit bigger. It actually takes up almost the entire Yeah, I'm not happy with this. I've just realised looking at it, it's not right. I'm just going to yeah, I'm just going to copy, just going to cover over this for now. It's going to be a little bit messed up because of the spray paint I did before, but no, I can't keep it. It actually needs to go. Let's start with the yellow. It's actually quite an orangey yellow. Actually needs to be around here. Better. And then it needs the blue, which Let's have a look. Problem here is if you don't get it right, it can really throw off the overall image of the picture. Okay, I can live with that just about. Now I need to add the call sign now. There's 2 letters in white before the roundel and 1 after. And I think the best way to do this is I'm going to try freehand. And the roundels I'm going to use are D, R, P. Because this is draw planes. So let's see if I can make it look semi-decent freehand. There is an option to add text into here. But let's see if it works if I do it freehand. Okay. Now, of course, there's the roundel on the wings as well, which, again, I'm just going to check for placement on a picture. Right. So it needs to be just blue and red. Not particularly big. Nope. A bit more like it. I think this blue's a bit too blue, if you know what I mean. Need to be a little bit darker, but you live and you learn. That's all right. That looks quite good, actually. Let's try and make it symmetrical. Let's clean up this at the back. Guys, nearly there. Starting to get to a point of being happy with this. Okay. Now we could, of course, do some action. We could do it going across the ground, strafing some tanks, but I think this one, if I just create a new layer here, I think it just needs a little bit of desert background, which I'll do with some airbrushing. Or texture? No, let's do some airbrushing. Now, don't be alarmed when this first looks like I've just ruined the picture. For anyone who doesn't know, this program allows you to do layers, which is very handy. So now I can just bring that layer on up front. And then I can add some cloud. A little bit of texture down below via and I think in the cockpit it needs something just to make it be less white. So I think what I'll do is spray paint it. So airbrush, sorry, airbrush. A little bit of blue. Then into something a bit more grey. Then a little bit of black detail. Around here. And then there's one final finishing touch before I end this, which is fine tip. No, I think that's too much. It's too overt. Okay guys, well, tell me what you think. I started with a simple study of the elliptical wing of the Spitfire. Decided we'd go to a desert camo version. And then developed it into what I think is a fairly acceptable representation of a Spitfire. I hope you enjoyed this. And yeah, leave your comments down below how it could have been improved or what planes you'd like to see next. Thank you very much.